Hello and God bless you. God bless you. God bless you. Welcome tonight to the Stress Less webinar. I think that in the days that we are living in today, that all of us need constant reminders about how we can reduce our stress levels. We are in the throes in the midst of COVID-19. Harsh economic times that are facing us. We're in the midst of war. Many things that the Bible talks about in Matthew, the 24th chapter, when Jesus prophesied about these things have to happen prior to his return. And so, what is it that we can do to be able to not have a life that is over flooded, or we don't want to be overtaken by stress? For those of you that are coming in, if you could just let us know your name, where you're coming in from. I am Rakesia McMillan, your total health coach. And as our motto is here, we are rocking our world with all things natural. And we're helping women to do the same, helping them to recover their health in body, soul, and spirit. And so I'm excited about tonight's webinar because it's a topic that I talk about often with the women that I work with, that stress is one of the number one killers of women in our Western culture. And as the Apostle Paul said, these things ought not be so. And so tonight, I just really want to share some principles and some truths about what we're going to actually be talking tonight. I'm just going to share my screen with you all. And so tonight is about the effects of stress on our mind and on our body. And again, for those of you that may not know me, I am Rakesia McMillan, also known as a total health coach. I'm an ordained minister, Bible teacher, honorably retired Air Force veteran, social worker, just many areas that I've been trained in. But one of the most important titles that I can carry is a believer of the Most High God, that I truly do love Jesus Christ. He is my personal savior. Out of all the accomplishments, that is one of the most important to me, having a personal relationship with him. And so tonight we're just going to share some things. So what can you expect from tonight's presentation? So if you feel that there's an area in your life where you're struggling with stress, you feel like you're burnt out, this series is going to help you to recognize the signs. It's also going to give you information to help you get through this phase in your life. And you're going to learn things such as stress and burnout and overwhelm, what they all are. I'm going to talk about the role of lifestyle factors and how that plays in stress. I'm going to also share changes that you can make right now to reduce the stress and overcome. And then finally, I'm going to talk about continued daily routines, some lifestyle changes, natural health remedies that you can implement to avoid chronic stress. So let's dig in and learn how we can finally take control of our lives by reducing stress and finding that happy place, as they say. I do have to share a disclaimer before we get into this presentation. So please know that I am not a medical doctor. I'm not functioning as a mental health professional tonight and cannot be held liable for the information written here. This information is meant to provide information to help you relieve stress, burnout, and overwhelm. For medical assistance, please seek help from a medical or mental health professional, and especially before making any dietary or lifestyle changes. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's get into our presentation. So chronic stress. Ladies, we are at a time where chronic stress is at an all-time high. And I really believe that at the onset of COVID-19, some of the statistics that I have been studying, reading, showing that depression, mental health issues, the stress has gone up by a whopping 300%. And so stress is something that everyone experiences it when we're in this life. But when we get into high levels of chronic stress, wherever that may be, we're putting ourselves at higher levels of health risks. And so you can worsen your anxiety, your depression. You may have an issue in your home life. There may be disruptions going on. And if these things are in a chronic or a continual cycle that you just are under constant stress all of the time, it's going to eventually lead to burnout and overwhelm. Because, for instance, just like we drive our cars, if we do not put oil in them, if we do not take care of them, if we don't put the maintenance in and we just keep driving the car, we hear the noise that the car is making because we know that it needs something. But if we don't stop, if we don't put on the brakes to take care of the needs, eventually that car is going to break down. It's the same way in our personal lives. So we've got to take care of our physical needs when it comes down to stress. And so taking a look at overwhelm. So stress, burnout, and overwhelm, they're pretty much closely related or connected. High amounts of stress can lead to a wide range of mental and physical side effects. And over time, you can reach the point where you burn out, followed closely by a sense of overwhelm. And when they're combined, they can wreak havoc on your personal and your professional life. And so here are some of the surprising causes of stress on our physical bodies. Stress comes in many forms and it can affect both our mental as well as our physical health. And so stress is, again, it's normal. It's something that everyone experiences, but that doesn't mean that it isn't serious. We should always take our stress level seriously, treat it just like you would any other health condition. If you have a cold, right? You're taking vitamin C, you're drinking hot liquids, you're doing what's necessary to overcome the cold. And so in order to find the right treatment, we have to figure out where the stress is coming from. And for those of you that have worked with me, you know that we always want to get to the root cause of what is going on, because the symptoms are an outward display of something that's going on, but we've got to get to the root. We've got to get to the underlying cause of why you're experiencing the symptoms that you are. So here are some of the top causes of the overwhelm that you're feeling. Not taking care of yourself enough. So you're not practicing self-care, not paying attention to proper nutrition. So if you're eating a lot of processed foods, if you're eating fast food, if you're eating a lot of candy, a lot of refined processed foods, that's not paying attention to your nutrition. You have relationship issues, even when they aren't obvious. And so if there's some tension going on in the marriage or the relationship, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a marital relationship, it could be a relationship within your family, it could be a relationship that is going on in your work environment, but those issues may not be as obvious. Some of the other things, daily annoyances that are adding up. It's just those little things. It's like, the scenario where you put the pebble in the jar with the water and you keep putting the pebble in until eventually it overflows and all of the water is pushed out and all you've got in there is just a jar full of pebbles. That's an example of daily annoyances that are adding up. Social media, this is a big one. That if we are continually filling our minds with whether it's stressful situations, whether we're listening to the news and what's going on all of the time, that can certainly cause a level of stress in your life. If your environment is messy and disorganized, that you cannot function properly or in a healthy manner, that when the environment is filled with clutter and disorganization. Because one of the things that I share with my clients often is your outer environment is an example of what's actually going on the inside of you. So if there's chaos, if there's disorganization going on mentally or emotionally, it's going to reflect in your outer environment. So operating in a messy and a disorganized environment, these are the top causes. Signs you are not handling stress well. This will happen. Stress among teens and adults has continued to climb every single year. So these are again signs that you're not handling stress well. From social media and technology influences to daily stressors, work and finances, we are bombarded with drivers of stress on a daily basis. So we're talking about relationships here, we're talking about technology, we're talking about work, finances, all the things that are going on in our daily lives. Stress should not be considered a normal part of life when it is overwhelming you and leading to a nervous breakdown and a full blown burnout. And again, that's like the example of the car. If we keep driving it without maintenance, eventually the car is going to break down. Eventually, there's going to be something that happens in our personal lives where we totally break down from the overwhelming amounts of stress that we're experiencing. Know when it's time to get a handle on your stress. So, these are some of the physical manifestations in your body that you know that your body has a language. And in my book, Rock Your World Naturally, 7 Divine Keys to Unlock Extraordinary Health, one of the things that I wrote in my book was that our bodies have a language. And when the body speaks, we must give our bodies what it needs and not what it wants. And so when our body is speaking, that's when we're feeling the aches, when we're feeling the pains, when we're feeling the overwhelm. The body is speaking and trying to say, hey, I'm trying to get your attention. There's something going on internally within you that I want to grab your attention. And so here are some physical manifestations that stress is out of control in your life. If you are having skin issues, if you're having skin problems, we always need to remember that our skin is our largest external organ. And it is the way that we detox. It is the way that we are able to cleanse the body. And so if our immune system, if our body is up under a lot of stress, it's going to try to detox through the skin, which causes acne to arise on our skin. You're constantly feeling overwhelmed. You feel like you can't get out of this cycle of distress. You have physical pain all over. So if you're waking up with aches, if you're waking up with pains, back pain, neck pain, leg pain, anywhere you have pain in your body, it's a sign that there is inflammation taking place because your body or your immune system is overly stressed. Another sign is that you're struggling with low energy. You lack productivity. It's hard for you to get out of bed in the morning. It's hard for you to get your energy going throughout the day because you are under so much stress. You have personal relationships and you're actually suffering in those relationships. Your work life is struggling. Again, these are all signs to know when it's time to get a handle on your stress. Here are some different ways that stress can also affect you. Your body reacts to high levels of demand and worries by giving you stress. This affects you mentally as well as physically. And most people with a lot of stress tend to get used to it, but that doesn't make it normal. And I think here in the Western culture and in many parts of the world too, that we have normalized stress. We have made it to the point to where we are operating and living in unsurmountable amounts of stress. And many of those stress sources, they overwhelm in such an unnecessary way that we can alleviate some of those things that we're actually experiencing. And so before you look at ways to reduce stress, it's a good idea to understand why we need to actually reduce stress in our lives. And so stress affects us mentally as well as physically. It increases depression. It makes the anxiety worse. It can cause personality as well as behavioral changes. And there are also physical effects of stress. Because one thing that I always like to say is that there is a body, soul, spirit connection. So our physical body, that's where we're feeling the aches. That's where we're feeling the pain. In the soul, that is where the depression, that is where the emotional trauma, the emotional unrest takes place. And so they're interconnected. So if the soul is overwhelmed with emotional issues, it's going to manifest in the physical body. Common personality and behavioral changes in people with high levels of stress. We know there's frustration, there can be hostility, bitterness, anger. People become more suspicious, they're overthinking simple scenarios, there's a lack of motivation. And in turn, this can cause you to become more isolated or lose interest in activities. And you're having issues that can cause you to be able to not focus as well as concentrate on your work because you're so overwhelmed with high levels of stress. If you're someone that seems to be always stressed out, you're constantly looking for more to add to your plate instead of managing the stress that you already have, you may be addicted. And so, what do I mean by that? You may be addicted. A lot of times, if you see individuals and they're overworked or they're in this state of being a perfectionist, trying to perfect everything, it's because they're caught in this cycle of doing it. They're caught in this cycle of always doing something. And so we want to be able to implement some positive things to be able to help you to break those cycles. And so the question is, can you be addicted to stress? How can stress be an addiction? It can often be hard to determine if you are addicted to stress, especially if you are used to being in a stress state or a large amount of stress all of the time. For people with chronic stress, it's very difficult to determine when your stress is a problem and when it's something you might be seeking out. And so, depending again on the situations that we're facing, it will cause you to develop unhealthy patterns. And so, here are some signs that you could be addicted to stress. You never have any free time, constantly jam packing your schedule, being bored when you have nothing to do, or feeling more accomplished when you are busier, or being used to feeling overwhelmed. These are signs that you may be addicted to stress. And so, this is how we're going to get a handle on the stress that can be overwhelming us in our lives. First, we have to come to terms with the fact that we're dealing with chronic stress and that you may be seeking out additional tasks, additional things to pile on your plate. We have to understand that everyone needs a break and that stress is common, but it's not normal. Even if we look at it from a biblical perspective, that there were many times when Christ always went away a great while before day because he was getting away not only to pray, but just to kind of refresh and to not be overwhelmed and overburdened and overtaxed with so many things that were going on in his day. We want to be able to work to reduce stress in simple ways. It's okay to say no to one thing this week. And I'm going to repeat that again. It is okay to say no. And many times that this is a very challenging area for many women because when it comes to setting up healthy boundaries for our well-being, that we may have so many responsibilities that we have to fulfill, whether that's wife, whether that's mom, whether that's business owner, whether you're on your job, ministry, all of the different things in between. And so we have to be able to set those healthy boundaries to know that it is okay to say no. Or you can ensure that you have a few hours a week of free time and then work up to a day when you have an entire weekend. Making small changes can help you notice the difference very quickly. And so sometimes it's not an overnight thing. And so, how I was sharing that you can just take a few hours out of the day, whether that's in your week. And sometimes I like to call that a Sabbath moment. That's when we're turning our phones off. That's when we're not engaging with any kind of activity that's going to pull us away, but we're just doing nothing but completely totally resting and relaxing. Why overthinking can be a bad thing. And so overthinking might not seem like a bad thing as it is when you analyze and think about a lot of things, you think about a lot of situations and decisions that have to be made. It isn't always bad except when overthinking leads to a lot of stress in your life. And this can definitely happen if you're overthinking a habit that ultimately leads to excessive worry, that opens up the door for fear, that opens up the door for anxiety. So, what we think about has a lot to do with how our bodies are feeling. So, if we're thinking about things that are good and true and perfect and lovely and of good report, of virtue and of praise, when we're thinking on those things, that's going to help refocus and center our mind in a way that is not going to be focused on the negativity. That's going to shut the door to worry. That's going to shut the door to fear and any anxiety because we're thinking upon positive things. Our meditation is moving in a totally different direction. And so, here are some things to help understand about overthinking and why you might need to switch up your mindset a little bit. And so, what is overthinking? So, overthinking is often accomplished by overanalyzing every little thing, constantly having the same worrisome thoughts in your mind that get worse by your own fears, thinking so much about things that are never really able, you're never able to make a decision. And this goes from normal to becoming a problem when it gets excessive and it has a negative effect on your life. And so you might have difficulty coming up with a solution to a simple problem. You may get anxious, or you can even fall into depression because of over exaggerated thoughts. And you have constantly obsessive thoughts that bring your mood down. And that is why it is so critical that we condition our minds on a daily basis. I am a firm believer that everyone needs to practice some type of mental meditation on a daily basis to set our minds on the right path, on the right course throughout the day, because we have to observe, we have to be mindful of what we are actually thinking about. We don't want it to impact our mood so much so that it will cause us to get into that state of overthinking, overly thinking those things that are going to pull us into that state of depression, anxiety, as well as get into fear. And so, one of the reasons why it can be negative or bad is that it can trigger mental illness, that part of our soul that becomes depressed, that part of our soul that becomes oppressed. It makes problem solving more difficult. It even affects our sleep because we're constantly thinking about negative things. And so, some signs that you might be overthinking. Here are some signs that you are overthinking. You overanalyze everything. You're not sleeping well. You have headaches, and you have a habit of ruminating. That means that you're mulling over it in your mind over and over and over and over again. You just can't let it go. You just can't let it go. But we need to be able to let these things go because they're crowding up our healthy ability to move forward as well as think clearly in our daily lives. And so here's what you can do about it. One is finding perspective. If you think that you are overthinking, try to find perspective. And what that means is that you're aware of what causes you to overthink and you're looking for the realistic approach. If you are thinking too much about one particular thing in your life, or you're going beyond what could realistically happen, or if there's a certain amount of stress going on, is that the cause? So you need to have perspective every time you see this pattern happening. It's what the Bible says that we should take no thought. So if we have a thought that is coming to our mindset and it is to the point to where, again, we are thinking about it over and over again in such a negative way, then we need to find perspective. We need to take a back seat and kind of think about what we're thinking about, to put it simply. Thinking about what we're thinking about and making sure that it is in line with Philippians 4 and 8. 2, being more mindful. Mindfulness is a great way to stay present and understand what you have been overthinking by not allowing the thoughts to overwhelm you. So, again, that goes back to think about what you're thinking about with a fresh perspective, a new set of eyes to really think about what it is that is on your mind. Journaling your thoughts. This is a big one. This is a huge one that I share with my clients all the time. I'm a journaler, and it has helped me daily when I journal, when I write things down. You're getting those thoughts down on paper. And sometimes the best thing that you can do is to when you're letting yourself overthink, but you have to be able to write it down on paper. There's power in pen and paper. And this allows you to keep from stressing. It allows you to declutter your mind, your thoughts. It gives you that space to think more clearly. It brings some clarity. And so through journaling, you can figure out where you are, you can analyze things, and you can figure out what you've been overthinking so much when you put it down on paper. It's very therapeutic and very healing. And so these were just some pointers, some tips that we wanted to bring to you tonight, and just a simple format. And so if there are areas in your life where you feel like you are just still needing additional support, send me an email at womenrockhealthcoaching@gmail.com. I would be more than happy to talk with you, to help you to work through some things. We can go through a 15-minute consultation, which is absolutely free of charge, to kind of see how we can bring some solutions to what you are experiencing. For those of you that have not followed me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, you can do so at Women Rock Health Coaching. And you can also subscribe to my YouTube channel at Women Rock Health Coaching. Thank you so much for being a part of the webinar on tonight. And we will see you later. Have a wonderful night. And we will talk with you soon. God bless you.